Let's talk about the World Expo that was held in Shanghai
Yes.
back in 2010.
Yes.
And it ran for 6 months. And the theme, I want to make sure I get it right, is Better City, Better Life.
Yes.
Africa is experiencing a large influx of people moving into the large cities. I think of Nairobi, think of Cairo, think of many others. And I think it's by 2050, 70% of all the people in the world will be living in urban areas.
Yes.
How is this trend being, I don't want to say confronted, but how is it being worked with in Africa, as in other places around the world too? What are the African leaders doing to provide services, health services, educational services to the influx of people coming into the cities? Because they all desire services and they need services. You have to have sanitation, services, transportation, that type of thing.
Absolutely. Well, Africa is probably the most rapidly urbanizing region in the world. There's a steady
most
and
rapidly.
growing, yes. There is a steady and accelerating inflow of people, especially young people, from the rural areas into the large urban areas in Africa. You know, Lagos, Johannesburg, Cairo, Nairobi, Dhaka, you name it. All the major cities in Africa are expanding very, very rapidly, posing huge challenges for sanitation, for provision of water, for the provision of other basic services. And so the UN is partnering with Africa to help them to tackle these challenges. It's a question of planning, it's a question of mobilizing resources, it's a question of bringing in the private sector, the NGOs and civil society. So there's a concerted effort with strong support from the UN, UN Habitat, the other UN agencies, to deal with the multiple challenges of rapid urbanization. Now this, as I tried to imply, is made more severe by the fact that so many of the population of Africa are young people. Well over 50% are under the age of 20, 25. There are some countries where roughly 50% are under the age of 18. So we have a huge youth bulge in Africa, which is exacerbating the challenges of dealing with the issues of urbanization. But what I want to underline is that there is a concerted effort by African governments, African civil society, with international help, with the help of the World Bank, the African Development Bank, with the help of donor partners, and I must highlight, with the very strong support of the People's Republic of China, India, Brazil, and the new partners who have joined Africa in tackling these challenges.
And that's very important to have those partners. We talked about the United Nations partners. You mentioned the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations.
Yes.
Who are some of the largest or most prominent NGOs? I know there are thousands of them out there, but that are working actively in Africa to help with a variety of different issues and situations.
I would highlight, you know, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, Oxfam, Save the Children, World Vision. I would also particularly highlight the faith-based organizations, you know, Samaritan's Purse, World Vision, the Catholic Relief Services. There's a whole range of them, and they're doing a tremendous job in many key areas relating to development in Africa. And I would also like to highlight that there is the growing expansion of African civil society organizations, women's organizations, faith-based organizations, youth groups, who are partnering with these international NGOs and civil society to make a real difference in many parts of Africa.
And of course you have service clubs like Rotary International, Lions International, Optimist, and they are all involved in helping to create that better world.
Absolutely.
One group we don't want to leave out is the private sector. There is a tremendous role for the private sector, especially in creating employment opportunities. Do you see that that is increasing, it's expanding in African countries?
Absolutely. I mean, the document I gave you, the speech from the managing director of the World Bank, highlights the massive increase in private sector investment in Africa, in telecom, in infrastructure, in agriculture, especially in oil exploration and in oil production. Across the board, there's been a tremendous expansion in private sector investment in Africa. Responding to the improved policy environment, many African countries have taken important policy measures to become more welcoming to private sector business from outside. And also, I would like to highlight the fact that there is a small sometimes vibrant private sector within Africa, which is beginning to gradually find its voice, beginning to play a more active role, now that many governments in Africa recognize that the private sector has a critical role to play. So there is a sort of combination of the private sector in Africa working hand in glove with the private sector from outside Africa to create a much better environment.
Now we've talked about, and I guess these are trends that are taking place in Africa, the fact that the majority of African countries are working towards the Millennium Development Goals, are actively involved in that. There's a burgeoning or an increasing middle class that's developing business community in the African countries. You have more of a heightened awareness of climate change and different problems like that. You've been working, well, you grew up in Africa, and you've been linking or liaisoning with Africa for years. You know the issues. What do you see as some of the myths that are out there about Africa? What do you see as some of the illusions or delusions that perhaps the media put out, or that we have, or people who don't live in Africa do not actually understand about Africa?
I think the biggest problem is there's a one-size-fits-all image of Africa. People forget it's a continent of 11.5 million square miles. As you said, the second biggest continent. People forget it's 1 billion people. People forget that there is this huge variety in Africa. So the biggest problem is that there's this one image of a whole region. That image basically is of starving people, of violence, of chaos, of incapacity. And so there's so much nuance that is completely lost. People forget there is a middle class in Africa. There is a business community in Africa. There are people who are working hard to make a difference. There are countries in Africa that are stable. There are women in Africa who are making a huge difference. There's a woman head of state. There's Mrs. Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia. There are women prime ministers. There are women governors of central banks. There are women in the private sector. So I think the biggest problem is the one image of the whole continent. So if we can help for people outside Africa to see the differentiation, to see the nuance, and to see that Africa, just like everywhere else, has a mixture of realities. It's a place of great variety. If we can help people to see the bigger picture and how varied that picture is, I think that alone would be a great achievement. And I must say South-South News is playing a very effective and important role in helping to, enrich the dialogue and to change the picture.
And it's certainly important to get information out to the public so that we better understand what is happening in Africa, and that it's all not doom and gloom. It's not the end of the world. It's not a revolution every day. It's not a civil war. But there are many positive things going on, as you mentioned, in the information communication technology area and combating the Millennium Development.
Africa is the most rapidly growing region in terms of the expansion of cell phone use. So that's a positive, which most people don't know about. It
certainly is. I didn't. Thank you for bringing me up to date on that.
And I'd also like to highlight the role of the African diaspora. There are millions of Africans now living here in the States, in Canada, in Germany, in UK, France, who are making an important contribution back home, not only in terms of the money they send back, they're setting up businesses, they're establishing schools and universities, they're making a huge difference through their engagement with their communities back home.
Yes, well, that's very important, that everybody participate. It's extremely important. Now, if people would like more information about your program, they can go to un.org.
Yes,
and
it's all
tap
there.
Into that. Great. Well, Mr. Patrick Hayford, I want to thank you so very much for a very informative program.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on South-South News.